Hi, this is Suzanne in Ohio. I had something to share with you today. I'm back to painting some more because I found the neatest things at the thrift store. And so, what they were was an assortment of these embroidery machine samples where somebody was obviously practicing and didn't finish them. Here's another one, only they did that in a different colorway. And this one and that. I'm trying to figure out what these flowers really are. I'm pretty sure this is a crocus. And then this one. Now, to explain what I'm doing, if they started it in a certain colorway, I'm just trying to finish it and fill in the blank areas. And so they did this all in these shades of, I don't know what you call that, kind of watermelon type colors. So on this one, I went ahead and painted the stems and tried to blend those buds in because they were like, whoa, let me get you down here just a little bit more. They were such a bright chartreuse. I couldn't live with that entirely, even though I love chartreuse. So this was the only thing done on this one was this leaf right here. So I put some wash of paint over top of it to knock the color back and then finished out painting the other ones. Now my plan is to um, scrappy these up with all kinds of lace and snippets and do a lot of slow stitch on them and probably mount them on the front of a journal. So I just thought it was the greatest find in the world. It's one of those things you could have easily overlooked if you hadn't been paying attention, because in and of themselves, not very attractive, but I thought, oh, the possibilities. At first, I was going to cut out little pieces of fabric and do some applique, and I thought, oh, heck, that's too tedious. So we're not going to do that. But I don't know if you care to, but if you want to hang on there, you can watch me mix up some paint for this one. Now, there's a lot of leaves on here, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But one thing for sure was they've done this in peach and orange, and I just wanted to see if I could fill it in a little bit with a color wash. Now I've got my paint off to the side here, and all I did was mix some red and some orange to get that last fuchsia color. So I'm going to take my orange by itself and put it over here and add some drips of water and get myself a real washed down thin paint here. And then I'm going to paint right over top of this. It needs to be thinner, I do believe. Now, I don't know what fabric they stitched these on, but I can tell part of it is synthetic, and I'm not crazy about that. Sorry about my hand being in the way. I'm not crazy about painting on rayon or whatever this is. It does act like rayon. Now, just so you can picture my madness here, this is a new surface for me. I don't know how the paint's going to react, whether it's going to absorb a lot of it or whether it's going to leave it on the surface so I can mix it around. But we'll just do the best we can here. And then by the time I get done doctoring them up with really pretty snippets and lace and all that kind of stuff, and quilt around them, of course, they'll look pretty nice. So this is a very watery mix. On the plate, you can see that it's more water than paint. And so I'm just going to fill in these petals and let that dry and see how it looks, really. Then I'll go back and add some highlights and some shadows. it's the outlining of this that's probably going to make it look as good as it possibly can. Now, I'm assuming that's a clematis, really. I'm going to put some touches of brown in the center of that. Just something to, I think they would have gone back um, with another color thread and added something to it. And then I'll go back in and add some white as highlights too. But it just looked too faded out. Okay, so let's do some leaves. I got a whole bunch of green out here. I want to keep these very, very watery. And actually, I don't feel like I have the true color of a clematis leaf. I'm trying to mix here. Once you do a lot of mixing with these little crafty paints, they kind of flatten out. They get flat. They lose their spark sometimes if you're not careful. But that's plenty of paint because I'm going to add quite a bit of water here to it. I just want to get a light wash on those leaves. I don't want to overwork them. For one thing, there's too many of them on this. And whatever I do, I'm going to have to go back and do it to every single one of them. And this is, you know, scrappy crafting. I don't know if I'll put these on the front of a journal cover or a front of a fabric basket or something. A little tiny miniature wall hanging. And that needs more water. Let's blend it in. Just get a dip of pure, nothing but pure water there. I'm not too worried about the edges because I'll be going back over it with something. And I can get the edges. And I'm trying not to fill in every single thread, every single place there's fabric, because it's better if you don't. It acts like a highlight. Depending on what kind of fabric you're on, it can act like a low light, a shadow, and we'll just get some stuff on here and see how it goes. Now you can see here on the orange, if you can see good enough, that fabric orange is working itself. It's melding into the fabric, and all it is a background wash. And I'll go back and liven it up just a little bit. However, you could leave it just as is. So, getting some really watery paint. Whoops, I've got a piece of polymer right there that dried on the paper, styrofoam plate. So, little piece of thread. I have the most wonderful thrift store in my town. I've told it before, but I'll tell it again. It's run by the Mennonite community, and all the profits go to World Outreach ministry type things, benefit type things, and it's been in town for so long that almost everybody, well, of course, in my town, that town, which is my town, but I don't live there right this minute. Everybody knows to give their stuff to the thrift store because it's going to go to a good cause. And they're able to send, just that one store, able to send quite a bit to missions every year. And all their help is volunteer except for some management people. And those people kind of get paid. I don't know entirely. I used to know because I knew a lot of the older women that helped organize it way back in the day. Okay, that's a good wash of green, and I just wanted to show you what I'm doing on a found treasure. It will be a treasure by the time I get done with it. So if you're interested, watch back, because as I make some journal covers out of these, I'll be showing those. Let me get a paper towel here. Now, if you're interested in the painting part, let me bring this one back. And if you notice that those leaves have several different colors in them. They have a base color and then a brighter, lighter color and then a darker color. And then on top of that, they have a shadow and a highlight. And that's what really gives them some depth. I've said before on my videos, I am no professional painter. I'm not a professional painter. Don't claim to be. I'm just grateful that I'm able to do what I'm doing. And see this green I have here? It's kind of too bluey of a green. And I don't like the color it mixes up. It almost looks too tropical. So I've been putting a touch of this burnt sienna in it, which has some red in it. And green and red being opposite each other on the color scale, they tone each other down. So I've got a stronger green here now, and I'm just going to put some on it, not entirely. Okay, that's enough. And go over here. And again, not working it all the way into the fibers. Not all the way. Leave some spaces as is. I'll bet the difference of this is really probably not enough for you to see it totally. This paint I've mixed up, I should call it a slurry, because that's about all it is. And I don't mix it totally 100% on my plate, because I like it if I pick up some paint that's not thoroughly mixed, and then it has a little bit different shade to it as I drag the brush along the fabric. And I'm just as guilty as any new painter, because I really am not a painter, but the trick is not to work it to death. A looser look is much more attractive. Okay, I've got basically a green here that I like much better on the painting. I'm going to add a little bit more of this chartreuse onto my plate so I can use that. And again, my method, which is very, very like self-taught, is medium shade of green, darker, lighter, and then highlights and shadows. And if I stick with that method, my things end up pretty decent. I'm fairly happy with them. So I'm going to add this lighter shade here of paint, and this chartreuse, that'll be my lighter shade of green. And because the fabric has some water in it, it'll kind of work its way in. I don't like working on something with this much of a repeat, because man, For somebody that really doesn't know how to paint, that gets hard. Okay, two of them now have that lighter shade of green. So I'm going to put some over here. Because that's way out there on the edge of the arrangement or the composition, I'm pretending like it's getting more sunlight. Okay. Okay, three more to go. This don't have to have a lot because it's in the background and it'll get more shadow than light. That's enough for that one. And let's just put a little bit out here. Okay, so that's two shades of green. The first wash was just a base, and then the medium green, and now the light green, and now a darker green I'll mix up. And I'll just use this slurry that I've got going here. Put a little bit more green in it, this green that I don't like, and some burnt sienna. And I want to get it considerably darker. And let's put a touch of red because red and green darken each other, cancel each other out. Okay, that's dark enough for my purposes. This is not going to be in the Louvre. So, and I'll just use this in places where I need a little bit darker green. I need some water for sure. Okay. Try not to get too obsessive over it. That's enough of that color. Now I'm just going to switch entirely to a shading color. And for that, because it's on my plate, I'm just going to use brown, or burnt sienna I should call it, and a tiny bit of purple. Because it makes it one of those nothing kind of colors, you know. And this little puddle right here is some just pure polymer that's squeezed out of my bottle before I knew it, and I love to use that because it thins the paint down. Okay, so it's very thin, and I'm just going to put some shadows where shadows should be. Not much. Okay, bear with me, I got to turn this just for the angle of my hand. Now, after I get enough shadows in here, let me take a look at it and see. Let's just put some here. just because the color needs repeated, and that leaf is in the background. Okay. All right, so let's see. I'm talking to myself here now. Just give a little shadow along the one side of that stem. Okay, that's enough. Don't want to overwork it. It's not going to be judged at a fabric arts anything. So I will go ahead and put my highlights on the leaves. And all the water I've got here, just what was in my brush after I cleaned it. And so I just want to take a little clump of paint and get the same consistency. Now, like I said, I believe this leaf is out here in the sun. So, you know what looks like too much to me at first, I have learned. I'm making a video. What I have learned is that okay, I'm sorry. Someone had to put something in my room. That the white highlights don't show up after they dry as much as you think they're going to. So get enough on there to look right or where you want them, and thick enough. It just seems to disappear. All right. See what I mean about working on so many repetitive things? And if you're not careful, you won't treat them the same. So you lose your what's called the artist's hand. It can go away pretty quick. If I even hold my brush different, then everything starts looking different. Okay, I've got enough contrast on there. When that white dries, it'll knock itself back. And now let's go back to the orange flower because it needs another layer for sure, just to not look flat. And I don't know, is there any such thing as an orange clematis? I don't know. So what I'm going to do is add some red here, make a puddle slurry of red, and get some red on the and maybe just take this in a different colorway, or at least in the middle. Let's do that since I started right here. I know I shouldn't be as obsessive about something like, is there really an orange clematis? But it's just how my brain works. Even when I look at other things, I'm thinking, is that right? Is that true to nature? So just putting some streaks bursting out from the center into that. And then I'll add some more water, a whole lot of water. And I've got a touch of orange over here on this corner. Maybe I'll be changing this colorway entirely. I don't know. However it turns out, it'll be just fine, won't it? Because it is a piece of scrappy art. Now that flower looks pretty flat and unattractive, but when I get some highlights in there, it'll come alive a little bit. Alrighty. And if you notice, I'm going right over top of that stitching. Put some color on that. It soaks right in. I don't know what kind of thread. I think it's almost always rayon that you do your machine embroidery with. Okay, I've got enough color on there. I'm happy with the contrast on the leaves. Now I'll get some highlights on the flower. And back to our white. And just making a little bit creamier color. You know what you could do also on something like this is you could use puff paints and add highlights and give it a little bit more texture. Since we're creating for things like junk journals and stuff like that, we can do anything we want. Little cutesy wall hangings, and there's nothing you can't. I've told my sister and I, we laugh about it. There's nothing hardly at the thrift store that I can't save one way or another. Boy, in our sewing section at the thrift store, you'd be shocked. I am always shocked, even though I know better, how many fabric arts pieces people donate that are unfinished. They never have finished them. Now, you can see that white is melting. It looks more distinct on the screen than it really is here in real life. It's starting to meld into the fabric. So I'm going back with some absolute pure paint, thick paint, and streak it in again, because it's just disappearing right before my eyes. And by the time it's dry, because of the amount of water in that fabric, I probably wouldn't actually be able to see my highlights. But you know, with that little bit of stitching on there, boy, does that give that a lot of texture to the actual piece when you're looking at it. Just wonderful. Okay, now here in real life, this looks great. I'm not sure what it looks like on your screen. There's one other or two other things you can do to something like this, no matter if you've created your own artwork or what, but I can put a little bit of color, like grounding it. So what I'm doing here is just putting some water to wet the fabric, and I'm just going to put a dab of color on there, and it just gives it just grounds all that. And that way when, oh look, I got a dot of green on there, I didn't mean to. And that's fine. This is the next thing I was going to tell you. You can splatter this. I love the splatter look, so I will probably do that. But here's just a little bit of this color down in here. Now, it's not as dark as it looks because most of the dark that you're seeing is water. When it dries, all you'll see is these little shadows of color there. Same color as the flower. And that's plenty right there. and I'll just work it in. And however it dries will be fine with me, because you get it too perfect and too predictable, and it ruins it, I think. Okay, I'm going to lift this up, and what you'll see here is this is my painting board, just a piece of cardboard I covered with some freezer paper with the shiny side up, which is water resistant. So that's what it looks like. And I hope you'll find something at the thrift store, and the next time you see something really odd, don't forget to pick it up. You don't know what idea you'll get when you get home. All right, thanks for watching. Tune back in when I get these made into journal covers. Thanks. Bye from Ohio, cold Ohio.